The reason I believe there's a God, okay, is because I believe there's a first cause. We call it the Big Bang. I believe in the Big Bang. You guys believe in the Big Bang, I hope.
I think it's the best explanation that we have right now.
Yep. Right. Well, yeah, the best explanations are basically the things I say, okay, that's what I believe in, the best explanation.
Okay, then you and I are different in that regard.
Okay. Well, we can use those same terms.
If we're going to stop at a first cause, or at least not continue further back, then we both stop at the Big Bang, but I don't feel any need to call it God.
I certainly don't need to either.
Okay, so
anyway,
continue.
go on.
Me too. Bye-bye. I'm on the phone with the people on TV.
Hey.
Bye-bye.
Say goodbye.
Okay. That was my wife taking off to a party.
Okay.
Okay, now see, you've either got to believe, at some point, you either believe in infinite time past, or you believe that matter somehow caused itself, or you have to believe that a mind caused it all.
Why couldn't matter have always existed?
Because that means that you have infinite time past if matter always existed.
What are you talking? Wait, but so it just goes on and on. Matter is infinite. Okay.
That's what you believe?
I'm saying that I'm asking you why it couldn't be so.
Because mathematically, if you go backwards in time and say time is infinite, and see, for matter to be infinite, time has to be infinite, then you would never actually arrive at today. No.
What you're using is Zeno's paradox. It's a confusing little thing that says if I'm trying to get from A to B and I can only cover half the distance every time, I can never actually arrive at B.
I am not using that one. No, we're not talking about the same thing.
Actually, you are.
No, because you just said point A and point B. And if we have an infinite amount of time, there's no point A.
The fact that time is infinite doesn't dictate where you are on a timeline at any given time.
Correct. I agree with that.
You're saying we couldn't get to today if time in the past was infinite, and you're simply wrong. It's an application of Zeno's paradox. It's no different from saying that if I want to cover the difference between A and B and I can only cover halfway, I can never get there. That's true. But the halfway is diminishing. It's an unfair limitation. And just because time possibly existed forever in the past doesn't mean that we couldn't have gotten today any more than we couldn't have gotten to yesterday, or a billion years in the past, or a billion years in the future. Time is the label that we put on the motion of matter.
Cause and effect.
And there's no reason to think that just because something is infinite.
Well, then explain it from a rational point of view, that if time was infinite past, how did time get to this point?
Time didn't get. Things move. Time's a label that we put on a particular instant or a particular passage of a period of time. I
don't believe you don't understand the mathematic, very scientific truth that if time goes on in both directions forever, you don't ever get to any point because there's no beginning point.
You don't need a beginning to get somewhere.
You just said point A to point B.
My beginning was 39 years ago, and I traveled, the matter that coalesces, that becomes me, traveled over those 39 years to get to this point.
Yes, it did. And see, it began somewhere, didn't it?
Yeah, well,
Matt did.
I began. The matter didn't. The matter existed. The label that I put on Matt, this particular assembly of matter and energy, is a label that we put on its current form. It was something else before.
And so you say that matter is infinite, that it has been there forever without a beginning.
I certainly don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, neither do I.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding at all. I'm
not kidding.
I don't understand
why. And how dare
it's
you
hard.
come on here and pretend like I'm missing some fundamental math thing when you don't even recognize that you're using Zeno's paradox as a way of saying we can't get here. You can't get there from here because it's infinite. Infinity is a concept that we use to describe something. It's not a thing. It's not a place. It's not a time. It's not a point. The fact that matter always existed is completely separate. Or not the fact that it did, but the possibility of matter always existing
to
is
say
complete.
That you're going to separate infinity from time is absolutely
Let me
ridiculous.
finish. The possibility that matter always existed is completely separate from what form it takes at any given point in time, and whether or not it can it moves and changes.
What does that have to do with it at all?
It has everything to do with it.
You're arguing a point that I'm not making.
No.
Which I've watched you do quite often.
Well,
but,
I might
okay. Let me make your point again.
all right. If time is infinite into the past, okay, then it can never get to this point.
You're
time
wrong.
had to begin at some point.
No, it didn't.
Well, time doesn't
Why?
begin.
Demonstrate it. Prove it.
Disprove it.
I don't have to disprove it. I can hang up. The thing is, you're making the claim. You have the burden of proof. There's this problem of infinite regress, which comes up in this first cause thing. And there's a really good quote from Carl Sagan. He's reading, I forget who the person was, a philosopher scientist who said, basically, we need to stop here, otherwise we'd never keep asking what came on, or what came before. And Sagan's response was, why stop? Why stop asking? There's no reason to think that matter couldn't have been infinite, that the universe isn't, in fact, infinite, that it could have gone on forever. The thing that you're not getting is that your claim that if time is infinite in the past, we couldn't exist at this point is flawed. You're saying if time always existed in the past, it couldn't have got here. What couldn't have got here? Time isn't a thing that moves. Time is the label we put on the movement of matter and energy.
Right.
Matter and energy changes. The mere fact that matter and energy has changed somewhat during the time that we've had this conversation means that time exists. And there's no reason for me to say that at some point in the past it had to begin. It simply always was. It may not have been anything going on. It may have been a simple point at one position in time, but let's say that heat death occurs in the universe and everything cools down and everything stops moving. Does time stop? Well, time, as far as mathematical equations with regard to relativity, may stop, but the relativity portion has been removed. The fact of the matter is that it'll continue infinitely. The matter continues to exist, even when it's done moving. And you can mark a minute after that, because a minute is a label that we've put on a period of time that we can identify. You can't just say, I have to prove that time could have gone on forever. You need to actually demonstrate that it's impossible, because you're using this as an argument for the existence of God.
Well, let me just add something here too, though. I feel kind of bad that I said that and asked it, because I derailed the conversation. Big Bang doesn't even say that matter is infinite or existed infinitely.
No.
It simply says that at the point of the singularity, that's as far back as it can be traced based on the theory.
And actually it stops at the Planck time. So.
And, prior to that, there's just no telling at this point, because we can't trust our understanding of physics beyond that. So I sort of derailed it. We got off on this thing about infinity, but Big Bang itself doesn't really account for what happened prior to this particular carnation of the universe.
It doesn't even tell us what happened at the moment of.
Right.
What that actual cause was. Basically, it's a descriptive model put together to describe the current state of the universe as far back as we can trace it.
I kind of want to make it clear that, my question about, could matter have always existed was not necessarily meant to imply that the Big Bang says that. Because we were kind of talking about Big Bang, and I just didn't want anyone to think that, if someone's watching, it doesn't.
But if your assertion is that that time couldn't have been infinite, otherwise we couldn't be here now, prove it. I mean, that's your claim. You got to prove it. And when you come back with prove that it didn't, well, you lose. I mean, I'm sorry that that's the case. I'm sorry that you picked up a claim that you can't justify, and you think it's absurd that people just don't flatly agree with you as soon as you assert it. But saying something's true doesn't make it so, and I can prove that. Look, I'm surrounded by naked cheerleaders.
But arguing it was sort of pointless, because nobody's really making the claim that matter always was. I simply asked. Yeah. But we have...
want to get this real quick. James